Today I am joined by Professor Gary Habermas. Good afternoon to you, Professor Habermas.
Well, Paul, I'm glad to be with you. This is a good day. It's a good day for an interview, especially going across the pond. So looking for a good time.
Absolutely. Okay, so today then, I'd like us to begin with the historicity of Jesus. And I'd like to ask you three questions along this line. And so the first question I want to begin with today is, was Jesus an invention of the Roman Catholic Church invented centuries after he was supposed to have lived?
Yeah, somebody wrote to me yesterday and they said, which of these questions about Jesus are cutting edge and which of them are on the outskirts? And the question they asked was, could Jesus have come from another planet? You know, and I said, look, I said, there are questions and then there are questions. Whether Jesus existed itself is a fringe question, but it's a big enough fringe that it's worth discussing. Whether Jesus came from another planet or whether he was an invention of the Roman Empire is so far outside of the scholarly guild that I'll bet you if you started writing to people, liberals, conservatives, or in between, you would get a lot of chuckles and very few people to even be willing to discuss it.
It's an interesting one because it's what I see most on social media. And of course, social media has such an impact today. It's the question that keeps on, or it's not so much a question, it's a comment that keeps on coming up that Jesus is just a fabrication of the Roman Catholic Church, which 400, 500, 600 years after he was supposed to have lived. And so it's one of those questions that's often on the minds of people who will be viewing this today. They will deem it as a very serious kind of accusation.
Yeah, you know, Paul, I when I hear things like this, I wonder what's behind these radical things for which there is not a speck of historical evidence.
Yeah.
And I try to look at it like this. Saying that they're bad questions doesn't make them a bad question. And as you said, they're popular whether they're bad or not.
Yeah.
Okay, but why do scholars scoff at them, and why do people who have never studied this outside of talking to their buddies over a pint or something, why do they think these are such good issues? And one of my only thoughts is the side that denies that Jesus existed hardly has anything historical to say.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that the wilder ideas stick because A, there's nothing else to say. The bases have been covered. And secondly, there are no data for these positions. So why don't you say outlandish things that are meant to scare and propel and anger rather than things that are grounded? Because what you don't have with those kind of questions is historical grounding. Saying that the Romans made it up and it was invented, 300 years later? You know, during Constantine, there's another one when the Romans did it, but it just, in historical terms, and I'll just make one comment. The difference is the extremely early data that atheist New Testament scholars think can be traced to a year to 2 years and maybe even weeks after the crucifixion. Forget Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, they're still early by historical standards. But the things we can say historically from just days to a year or two later is that alone is 10 times more data than anything that can be made for alien Jesuses and Roman Jesuses and Roman Catholic Jesuses. And by the way, that's not to be blamed on the Roman Catholic Church. Somebody else, the Roman Catholic Church would be appalled. It's blamed on somebody else. So I just think where these things go, I think Christians should learn to say, all you've done is make an assertion. Where are your 10 points of data? And by the way, since you asked me for first century evidence for what I say, how about you give me 10 points of data for your Roman Jesus invention? Give me 10 points, not Bobby says so down the street from me, but how about this textual example, this piece of archaeology, this bit of evidence? And I'd like them to be in the first century. And according to your own standards, you won't allow Mark from plus 40. So I would like all your evidence, come to think of it, to be within 40 years of the cross. You have to go by your own standard. Okay, and I'm going to shut up and let you give me your list of 10 evidences. Fire. And here's what you're going to probably hear. Oh, I didn't say I could do it. I'm just saying this makes sense as a... Yeah, this made sense as you were sitting in your living room last night thinking about this. Not that you have data. It kind of bugs me because these comments bother a lot of people with no good reason whatsoever. Anyway, that's enough.
Okay,
that's about all it deserves.